So I just want to make sure I have your consent to do an interview with you to collect data for a research project, and I have your consent to record the interview.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So I'm doing my honors research project at the University of Wits, and I'm doing it on collectible cars. My main research question is, what is the criteria to evaluate a collectible car in order to determine if it will be a good investment?
Okay.
Okay, so how long have you been involved in the collectible car space or industry?
Probably about 30 years now.
30 years, okay. And has your involvement in the industry been in a professional or personal capacity?
In both, because I do insurance on these vehicles. So from a professional point of view, I own majority shareholding in a company, 50/50 luxury car insurance. And that 50/50 luxury car insurance is predominantly high-end vehicles. So we only insure vehicles 750,000 and above. And if your car is driven for 15 days or less, we give you a rebate on your premium, which makes it a very unique market. There's nothing like this in the world, and the product has been patented. So I would say in both capacities, professional and my passion for vehicles, hence I've collected my own.
And then has your focus been primarily on collectible vehicles that are considered as classic, so the older stuff, or does it extend to modern collectible vehicles?
Both.
Okay. So you do believe that there are vehicles built after 2000 that are collectible?
Yes, I do.
So I move on to the investing part. So do you believe that collectible vehicle space in South Africa is growing, and how does it compare to the international market?
So I would say that we're growing favorably because especially in South Africa, people need and want to diversify. So when it comes to how our rand gets affected, it's a major role that we play in collectible vehicles, because when a vehicle in Europe or in London is being sold for £50,000, hypothetically, we in South Africa are selling that same vehicle for £50,000 now, because it is in demand in the UK. So a lot of the market, South African market, we follow the UK market. So
in terms of pricing
in terms of pricing and collectibles.
Also trends as well that happen.
So trends, yeah. We actually follow, South Africa follows those markets, especially right-hand drives. So right-hand drives, you have Australia, you have New Zealand, and you have the UK that do a lot of those collectibles. And those collectibles, the older vehicles, there's certain vehicles that are more collectible in different countries. In Australia, the Ford Fairmont and the Ford range, if I can call it, the Capri, those older vehicles, those are more collectible in Australia because originally they were built in Australia. So they become very rare and collectible in Australia. In the UK market, all Fords are very collectible, especially the older ones. And because we don't, depending on where the car is located, if it's inland, we don't have rust. Come inside. We don't have that much, the big problem with rust. So our cars actually are able to withstand a lot of the weather conditions. In the UK, when it snows there, they throw salt on the road, which creates thanks Ignace, which creates a problem with rust on their cars. And when their cars rust is a horrible thing because it just keeps on. Thank you. It keeps on, messing up the cars.
The condition.
Yeah. So where you don't have spray work on a car, where you have original paint work on the car is a lot more valuable. So those are the things that we follow, those trends. A lot of our South African cars are being sold overseas.
And exported.
Lots of them.
So is that more because you'll get more for it overseas, or?
Yes, the price, the demand is better.
Okay.
And also the price, the value here in South Africa. Hypothetically, I'm sure you've seen 325 IS is now selling for R1 million.
Yeah.
Right? In the UK, it's not as in demand as it is here in South Africa, but it's getting there. So people are almost buying these cars as investment cars here,
And then,
holding them, and the UK market then. So certain cars follow a trend. I know of 3 XR8s that have been exported to the UK. And that was insured with us, and it was insured for over 750,000. Those cars, brand new, came out at probably about 400,000, brand new. And they got sold for over R1 million because they're V8s.
Yeah.
And it was limited numbers that were brought out.
okay. And then, are collectible vehicles a viable investment for investors?
It depends what type of vehicle you buy. When you say collectibles, you can't put your finger on it and say that this is definitely a collectible. Okay. Some of the newer cars that are coming out, you're hoping that they are going to become collectibles, and you take a chance by buying them and keeping them in great condition. The SLS, that because the gullwing, the past has taught us, the 300 SL, the Roadster, the gullwing, that day, if you look at what they're selling for now, you can't find one.
Yeah.
And if you do find one, you're paying like 45, close on to 45,000, or not thousand, you're paying like $4.5 million on that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't find those cars. So if you look at the SLS, it came out brand new here at 1.6 million.
True.
Brand new, the Gullwing SLS came out, I think in 2011 or 12, somewhere around there, and brand new their car cost 1.6 million. Today you can't find one under 3 million. Not a single one under 3 million. So yes, you can't pinpoint exactly that this is going to become a collectible. It's looking at market trends. Right now, V8s, we presume that V8s are going to become collectible because a lot of the European standards and American standards are saying that because of carbon emission, they want to go down to 2-liter motors with turbos rather than having V8s because there's so much of pollution. So they're trying to bring that down. Also, because of electric vehicles coming in, you don't want to have the problem with having a V8 compared to an electric vehicle. So that's the reason why a lot of people are holding on to the V8s and the V12s because they believe it's going to become collectible.
Okay. And then what advantages or disadvantages does investing in collectible cars have when compared to safer investments like shares, property, stocks, things like that?
There's advantages and disadvantages. Advantages depending on where you are in South Africa. Advantages are if you're inland, your cars are kept in a better condition because you don't have the rust, whereas on the coast you have the rust. So the advantages are that you can keep a car and keep the mileage down and maintain the car a lot easier here. Whereas the disadvantages are your cost. Your cost to maintain that car is high because they're high performance cars. So you've got to make sure that mechanically that car is only valuable if you maintain it to a certain standard. So the cost of that, it's licensing, it's insurance, it's maintenance on the vehicle, and those are the disadvantages. So you've got to be prepared to keep that under control. Otherwise, your investment could actually be a bad investment.
Do you think that the disadvantage of those insurance and maintenance costs are significant in comparison to the return you're making on the equity in the car?
You see, because you don't know whether these cars are actually going to. There's certain cars where it's almost a guarantee they're going to make money, okay, and then there's certain cars that you're speculating. It's almost like you're buying shares.
Yeah.
So you're speculating. You're buying hypothetically a BMW CSL. If the mileage is not low on that car, they're looking at giving you book value on the car, or slightly more, but not. If the mileage on that car was low, they're going to give you a much better price on that car. So it depends on the condition, and that's why I'm saying you can't really, depending on how the car is looked after, a lot depends on that makes the decision on how the car's value is going to maintain. So like shares, as you mentioned now, to give you an example, to maintain hypothetically an Aston Martin, annual servicing is going to cost you 100,000 rand, and that if you hardly did any mileage on it, right? If the brakes go on that's another 100,000 rand because it's carbon ceramic brakes. So all of those things add to your cost. So you can't, hypothetically, you can't really say whether this year is a great investment. You're hoping and praying that this year is going to be a good investment. So cars can be a good investment depending on how you actually look after them.
Okay. And then, is investing in collectible vehicles relatively low risk?
There again, depending on what type of vehicle.
So would you say you get maybe a category of high risk and a category of low risk? So the low risk would be more like, okay, with almost certainty we can say that they will appreciate. And then with the high risk ones, you are speculating, it may not. It's a risk.
So there's 4 different divisions, okay? And I'll give you an example. You could buy a Porsche GT3 that's relatively low risk. So if you drove it over a weekend, it's low risk because nobody is going to steal that car. The possibility because our market is South Africa, and the questions you're asking me pertain to South Africa. So no one, you could park at a shopping mall and go in, or a restaurant and go in and know that your car is relatively safe. Okay. Whereas if you did the same thing with a 325 IS,
gone.
You're hoping and praying that car is out, and I wouldn't even take my car to a shopping mall or a shopping center and park it for 5 minutes. I would actually drive it and drive it back straight up. I would not stop anyway, because the possibility of it getting stolen is much higher than one of the other collectibles. So it depends on what car you're driving.
And now, in terms of a low risk or high risk as an investment, so if you look at shares, if you're investing in shares, you'll say, okay, this one is maybe a medium risk or a low risk.
Yeah.
In terms of collectible cars, do you think investing in them is a low risk or medium or high, or does that depend on the car?
It depends on the car.
Depends on the car.
A lot depends on the car. You're almost certain that a SLS is going to be increasing in value. Whereas if I took hypothetically a C63S Edition 1, I'm hoping and praying that it's actually going to go up, because I'm looking at the other cars that were in the similar category. So they had a C63 507, which has grown from 1.5 million and they're selling for about 2 million. You've seen the Black Series also selling brand new, came out at about 1.6 million, selling for 2.2 million. So you're looking at those trends and you're saying, well, the C63S Edition 1 is the one that just comes in after that. So if you follow those 3 trends, then there's a strong possibility that, but you can't be assured, because they only made 300 and some odd vehicles in the world of that. So numbered cars are also very important. If they made a limited number, that's where your stronger chance of actually getting or making money on the vehicle, because demand and supply is always there. And if there's a bigger demand than what they've supplied, the C63S, they've only made 300 and somewhat in the world. So you know for a fact Europe will probably want to buy our cars in the future, because our cars are in good condition and well maintained, and that's when the value goes up.
Okay. And then how do prices of collectible cars in South Africa compare to the prices on the international market?
Very favorably. We follow the UK trends. So a lot of our South African market, our dealers have become, because the world has become smaller in the sense of internet. So they do not put up the cars for sale unless they look at what the demand is overseas. And when they see what the demand is overseas, that's what actually influences the South African market. So we're following the world market.
So you said the dealers would look at both the South African market and an international scale before pricing and marking a car?
Yes, definitely. We don't sell. We follow the trends of the UK market. A 500 SL, for instance, before you could pick them up for 100,000. But because the UK, because it's right-hand drive, because the UK market, they are selling great condition ones for, call it South African, 500,000-600,000. Now those cars have gone to that price. Before it wasn't that way.
Okay. And then what sort of emotional return do you feel when owning and using a collectible car? And do you consider this to be less or more important than the financial gain you experience?
When you're buying a vehicle purely as an investment, there's no emotion attached to it. Because if you get your price, it's gone. But if you're buying a vehicle purely because of the sentimental attachment to it, because of the passion that you have for it, yes, then you're not actually worried on the investment value. So there's certain cars that I have that I really don't worry about the investment value. My M5, the E34, I'm not worried about the investment. It has grown compared to, I can get more than what I bought it brand new for. But because I really enjoy driving that car, and it's old school, I'm not really worried about what am I going to get back as a return.
So do you think there can be a middle ground between, I like this car, but I'm also looking at it as an investment? So you get the emotional side of it, but if a good enough offer comes that you make enough on the financial side, you would let it go.
So you start off, so the collectors don't start off saying, I'm going to collect cars. They never start off that way. They start off on an emotional basis. I don't know of anyone, unless it's a brand new vehicle that's limited edition and a person's buying purely as an investment. That's the only time those people are buying without emotion. Or I would honestly put my head on the block and say, every one of those people that buy vehicles buy it more on an emotional basis and with the intention of having it in their collection and growing their collection in time. So it becomes a financial thing where you now start picking and choosing what cars do you really like that will also give you a decent return. But when you start off more on a passion. This car here looks nice. I think it could have a potential of growth and possibility of a good return. So I will actually go and buy a Ford Capri hypothetically and do it up, and I know I could get a return on it. So it's passion and
So a bit of both.
a bit of both, yeah.
Okay. Okay, now the next section here is this 15 criteria now. And I want you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 7, with 1 being not important and 7 being most important. So when you're evaluating a car to see if it will potentially be a good investment. So if a car comes, these are the 15 things to look out for, and which ones are more important than others. Okay, so the first one is mileage.
Very important.
But the mileage is split up into pre-1980 cars and post-1980. Because obviously with the older stuff...
So even with the older stuff,
Even with
mileage
the older
is
stuff.
important, very
Okay.
important. So lower mileage, always higher value.
Okay, so what would
Always.
you...
So I would go 7.
7,
on that.
okay.
Mileage is absolutely
Very important, okay. Historical significance, so that's like homologation cars. Was it the first car with the air suspension, or the first car with this, or was it special in any way?
middle of the road. I'll go 3.
Okay. And then drivetrain configuration, so like all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive.
4.
Okay. Engines, so V6s, 4 cylinders, V8s, things like
Trends are changing, but I would go 5 on that.
5.
Trends are definitely changing because of electric vehicles now. So now the collectors are becoming more aware of the V8s and the V12s and collecting those.
Okay. Then the next is paint condition, interior condition, how close it is to original when it came out of factory.
I would go 6.
6, okay. And maintenance history, so that's all service records, all of that paperwork and stuff.
Also that they get split into the pre and
Post
so
factory.
older, yeah. So
Okay.
your older vehicles, not so much history. So I would go on that day middle of the ground. So between 3 and 4.
Okay. And then on the newer stuff,
Newer stuff, very important to go. You must have a service history. So I would go 7 now.
okay. And then number of previous owners,
It's more on the condition than the owners. So
Okay.
it really doesn't matter. I would go 3 or 2 on that.
okay. So you'd say that if a car is in good, you'd rather buy a car that had maybe 10 owners, but is in fantastic condition, than a car had 1 owner and the car's in horrible condition.
So absolutely, because the 10 owners could be bettering that car all the way.
Could all be meticulous guys and
Yes.
stuff, and then the one could have been terrible.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then famous previous owners. So for example, like Harry Oppenheimer's Jensen, do you think it makes a difference on the value?
It does. It definitely makes a value. So I'll go 5 to 6 on that
Okay.
because it does. I owned PW Buerta's 280 SE, and because it in the service books it had his name and it was gifted to his wife. I got 300,000 rand more for that.
Just because of the
Just
historic.
because of that. So it does count. Yeah.
Okay, then location, the car spent most of its life. So was it inland, coastal, important?
Very important. 7 on that.
Okay.
It's very important.
Originality, how close it was to the day it came out of factory in terms of mechanically, in paint, in the overall
6.
car. 6, okay. Modifications with period correct parts.
5. So if a lot of these cars, there's parts that are being put in that better the car, because now the newer cars, so the older cars, there's certain like fuel pumps. Fuel pumps now, electronic fuel pumps are much better than the older pumps.
Like, I mean, with the plastic fuel tanks and the original plastic
That's
tanks.
correct, yes.
So, I mean, it is a better modification.
Yes. So if it's done in that respect, but where it's modifications where the guy has gone and put things that weren't supposed to be on the car, he's built up his own spoilers and all,
Yeah.
it actually devalues
That hurts a car. So it just depends on the correctness of the modification.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then commonality, so that's looking at trends. So if you like assessing a E46 M3, seeing will this be a collectible car, would you look at things like a E36 and a E30 to see if this will be based on similar cars?
So that question, you've got to look at it from 2 aspects. I have a Chip Foose Mustang. It's the only one in the country. But from 2016 to now, it's actually increased in value. Whereas the normal Mustang 2016, without the chip boost conversion, has actually decreased in value.
But if you look at trends, you'd think they would have. If you looked at trends, you would have thought yours would have decreased, just based on pure trends.
Yeah, but because it's the only one in the country, there's no one else. It's actually increased.
Yeah.
So keeping the car, having certain things done on the car that must be in line with certain type of famous brands affiliated to it. A lot of the people now in the supercars go to a place here in Four Ways that do the Novitec conversion.
Race.
Yeah. So Race is the only one in South Africa that does it. But that increases the value. So we actually, from an insurance point of view, we use that as an increased value. But if you went and put in a free flow from Joe Soap,
Yeah.
we're not going to increase the value of that. Even though you paid 20,000, we're not going to increase.
So the commonality, what would you rate it if looking at trends? So purely just looking at trends of some
Just
of the
looking
cars.
at trends, I would go 4 on that.
4, okay. And then the last two is production numbers and survival numbers
7.
on both.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is there any criteria you would want to add to this list?
I think you've covered everything because the numbers and the scarcity of the cars, those all combine in the numbers.
So you think it comes down to production numbers, survival numbers, condition, and
that's basically, you've summed it up.
the priorities.
That's where you're actually getting value in your cars. There was no numbers put on 2 or 3 to 5 IS, but the survival of those cars
Hardly any, yeah.
are rare. So to find one in mint condition, and now the German spec M3 is becoming just as rare. So you'll start seeing those values. If I've seen now one also for R1 million, and that I bought that car brand new for 250,000 rand when it came out, and it's gone to R1 million. So it's definitely there's certain cars that have got more potential of growth than others, and yet others like your S-Class Mercedes, they are absolutely gorgeous cars, but the same year that the M3 came out, an S-Class was probably 4 times the price.
At the time, yeah.
Now you can pick them up for nothing.
Yeah,
really,
it's a
you don't
fraction of the M3's value.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think that would also maybe go back to production numbers. There have probably been a lot more S-classes built than German spec M3s.
Surprisingly not. The S-Classes were built in big numbers because they were in big demand at that time.
No, I mean, I suppose they built a lot more S-classes than M3s.
There was no number on the M3s, but the M3s were also, you could get them in whatever numbers, like the way you can today when you order any car. If you order it, there's no numbers on those cars. So you don't know how many were actually built, but how many survive. There's probably a lot more S-classes that survived than M3s, because M3s are driven hard, and because it was the sports car of the day, a lot more were written off than the S-classes. The S-classes were always the gentleman's car, and they were driven very conservatively compared to the M3s. The M3s was this youngster that just got out of university, and he was able to buy this car here. So and lots of times they were written off.
Okay. So you think that that list is pretty comprehensive. Are there any final comments you want to add with regards to collectible vehicles?
I would like to actually just say one thing, is that the person that gets it right, where he has a garage full of collectibles, is a genius, because there's no hard and fast rule on which car is going to be a collectible in time to come. You can almost speculate and hope, because of the numbers and what you've just put down. Those elements are absolutely crucial. If you can condense this here and put it down and say, this, if you get these 5 points right, then you got a collectible. If you do these things right, you will have a collectible. But if you get it wrong, one of them wrong, you don't have a collectible. So, yeah, so I think that you've got quite a comprehensive study there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just gonna end the recording.